How to Write in 5th Grade, Volume 7 of 11. Copyright 2014, Luke Sullivan. A narrative. You have been given a day off from school. Tell about how you spent your day. For your last piece, you wrote a narrative or a story about taking care of something. You practiced all of the structural elements of a story. You're going to continue to work on narratives, deepening your understanding of their structural elements. You have been given a day off from school. Tell about how you spent your day. Looking at the prompt, what are the words that signal that this is a narrative prompt? The words tell about means that they want a story. Other words that signal you have to use a narrative structure to answer the prompt are write about, describe your adventure, what experiences. Start with a lined sheet of paper. Brainstorm for 2 minutes about things you might have done or might want to have done on your day off. Recognize writing a story for a prompt like this can be nonfiction or fiction. You want to get about 7 things down. Good ideas for stories are ones that can be developed with lots of detail, dialogue, and yes, even some action. Look at your brainstorming list. You're not going to include all of these ideas in your story. Instead, you're going to focus on one. Find one idea that has all of the elements that are found on your narrative graphic organizer. Do you know the setting of your idea? Setting is the time and place where your stories begin. Do you know who the characters would be? What did you do? What is the most exciting or interesting thing about this idea? These are all the elements necessary for your story. Choose an idea that contains all of these elements. Write your name and idea on your narrative template. This is the simplified structure of a story or narrative. You'll create and write all of the structural elements here. Then, using this template as a guide, you'll write your first draft of your story. For this assignment, leave the attention-grabbing beginning blank. When you have written a first draft, you'll know what is the most exciting part of your story. Then you could take a little bit of it and make it your attention-grabbing beginning. Paragraph 2 is where you set the scene. Your story should begin where it needs to, but not a moment before. Put the setting of your story at the beginning of the problem or the difficulty that the characters face. Choose this moment and visualize it in your head. Take a blank piece of paper. You're going to draw a picture of the beginning of your story. You'll only spend 5 minutes on it. You can draw stick figures and you don't need to color it, but you have to put in lots of details. Look at the picture you've drawn. You're going to use it while you complete the setting part of the worksheet. The first elements to write down are the when. When is your picture? The summer of my 10th birthday. The day after my baby brother was born. Just after breakfast, before my dad drove us to school. The next elements to write down are the where. Where is your picture? Next to the big tree in your backyard? On the sofa, down in the basement? In the back seat of my dad's car on the way to Chuck E. Cheese's? These descriptions put into words the picture you drew. Notice my examples don't include numbers and labels for the where and the when. 8 o'clock is not as interesting as just after breakfast before my dad drove us to school. 112 Buck Lane is not as interesting as in the back seat of my dad's car on the way to Chuck E. Cheese's. Look at your picture again. Identify the nouns and pair them with an appropriate descriptor. What are the adjective-noun pairs in your picture? A hot yellow sun, a gurgling creek, a blaring TV, tasty chocolate cupcakes, squishy cold water balloons. Write down 4 adjective-noun pairs that are in your setting. The third paragraph introduces the main character of your story. The main character is the star. The main character is usually whom most of the sentences are about. Think Encyclopedia Brown and Matilda. You write only a few sentences for the other characters. For this prompt, you are the main character. Tell about how you spent your day. For other stories, you might have 2 or more main characters. For this exercise, we'll have 1 star. Write myself on the character line. Describe yourself physically. This means people can see these descriptions, so you don't have to prove them. Do you have long hair and green eyes? Is your face covered in freckles? Are your eyebrows dark or light? Do you wear jean shorts that hang down? Can we see your plaid underwear? Do you have a feather braided into your hair? Do you only wear One Direction t-shirts? Make sure you have at least 4 descriptive details for face and hair, and 4 more for the clothes you wear. Character traits are descriptions that need to be proven. I don't have to prove her eyes are green, but how do I know she's funny? You have to prove it by explaining or giving an example. I am very funny. I like to tell jokes at the dinner table to my family. Once, my brother laughed so hard, milk came out of his nose. He almost died laughing. Write down an action or behavior that describes you. It's always easier and more accurate to find an action or behavior first, and then assign a word to label it. The label is the character trait. Decide on a character trait for the action or behavior you chose about yourself. Narratives are designed to get the reader to feel something. Does it make the reader feel scared or sad? Are they happy or amused? Stories need to create an emotion. This emotion has an arc. Look at the diagram at the top of your narrative template. After getting the reader's attention, setting the scene, and introducing the main character, the author begins the story. As you describe what you did on your day off, your reader becomes more interested. This interest builds through the beginning and middle of your story, with the most interesting part of your story at the climax. Write down your story in fragments and phrases. These will serve as placeholders for your ideas. You'll write it all out later in your first draft. On day 1, you did most of the hard work in writing a story. You created all the elements in a graphic organizer. Today, you'll assemble them into a first draft. This is what real writers do. The first draft is an assembly process, putting together all of the elements of your story. One big decision you have to make now is whether to write in the first person or write in the third person. Writing in the first person means the person telling the story had the events happen to them. Think Wimpy Kid and the Dork Diaries. The hero talks to us and tells us what it was like. There's usually a lot of I's and me's in the piece. It helps to make a happier mood. No matter how bad things get, we know the hero will still be all right at the end of the story because he's telling us the story. The following is a sample of a day at the beach. It's written in the first person. Writing in the third person means the events didn't happen to the person telling the story, but they know about it and are telling us what happened. Think Matilda and Harry Potter. This can make the mood more serious. Anything could happen to the hero in the story. The following sample of walking the dog is in third person. For this kind of writing prompt, younger writers should choose to write in the first person. An older writer could answer this prompt writing in the third person. Your story begins with an attention-grabbing beginning. Last time you made it by taking a little bit from your most emotional moment and using it with an established writing technique. You'll do it again today. Look at the climax from your writing. Choose an interesting bit that you can use at the front of your story. For example, your day off from school may have as its climax riding a roller coaster. Take that little bit where you are at the top of the hill about to rocket down and portray it with one of the attention-grabbing techniques. Use a quote. "Corey, I think I'm going to throw up. Why did you make me do this?" And with that, the first car of the roller coaster rocketed down the hill. Ask a question. Do you think I'm crazy if I decide to take a day off from school and then spend it trying to scare myself to death? Ask a riddle. What has 10 cars, 40 screaming people, and sits at the top of a 400-foot hill? If you said a roller coaster, you're right. Make a strong announcement. The best way to enjoy a day off from school is to spend it at an amusement park, riding the highest roller coaster in the world. Now you do it. Take a moment from your climax and use it to write an attention-grabbing beginning for your story. The next paragraph of your story is the setting. Use the elements from your setting worksheet and write a paragraph. The next paragraph of your story is the description of your main character. That's you. Write a paragraph describing you. Your story comes next. Someone said think of a story like a square rotated 45 degrees. The middle portion goes from corner to corner. About 50% of all your sentences in your story should be fitting in this middle section. Count the sentences after you write your first draft. The last element of your story is a signal that your story is over. Write a paragraph telling the reader how you feel and what you're thinking now that your day off school is over. The word revision means to see again. Today, you'll read your draft 3 or 4 times. It should form to the emotional arc of your template. You might realize that your story doesn't have a great climax. If you spent the day off school playing video games in your basement, the climax might be, when you win a game. If instead you spent the day horseback riding, the climax might be where you jumped your horse over the fence. The ability to write stories with this kind of emotional arc is what makes a good writer. We aren't all born good writers, but we can all write stories with this narrative structure. If your story has sentences that don't help the arc, put an X through them. If your story needs sentences to help the arc, write them. Remember, it is good to adjust the events to help support the emotional arc of your story. You're not relating history. You're trying to manipulate the emotions of your reader. You work on your story. Good job.